Hello, welcome guys to Top Black Your Sins Drummer, and welcome to episode number 2. Yes, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining in for today's podcast. I'm Top Black Your Sins Drummer, and welcome. So today I want to mention about fills. I kind of feel like fills are so misunderstood that we understand the basic, literally in quotes, basic concept of fills, and I feel like most of the time with most drummers, they don't really understand the concept of a fill. Now, they get the job done, fills and rock music and all that, but why not go another layer deeper? So let me put a scenario in y'all's head and all, or a little bit of backstory where I'm coming from. So in the beginning, when I was like on Instagram, I used to go onto these drummers that wrote down like transcriptions of their fill ideas. And some people just write ideas down, and other people, they do these really crazy things, what I call number fills, where they have these numbers and they just count. I think they count these numbers. And it's very weird. I still don't understand what it means, actually. But to me, it doesn't sound natural. It just sounds like you're counting and you're not having meaning with the fills. And I don't think some of the popular players back in the day were thinking about that type of stuff. It's more of a modern thing that people are doing. And I don't personally care much for them because it doesn't seem natural. It's not organic. So I see these Facebook and Instagram drummers that not so much with the numbers, but they write down these fills and they play them. They just play the fills, and rarely I do see people play the actual beat and play like a rock beat or what this groove, this fill goes with. But if someone didn't implement that, or they just took this fill idea and they just put it willy-nilly somewhere, then there's a possibility someone might get fired during a gig and they played that fill. It's like, that's super out of place. Why aren't you thinking logically about fills? And so that's kind of a little bit of a downside when musicians are trying to figure out where they are and how they can make their fills a part of them, like their signature fill sounds. And I have a couple of those. I'm not trying to sound like I know it or anything. I personally feel like that I have go-to fills that are actually kind of like my own signature a little bit. So let's talk about the concept of a fill. So in my personal experience, and also other teachers that I've had, they mentioned about what fills are, because this is something, fills are a big, it's like a hot thing, because I see people post like these ads about fill packs, like especially the Orlando drummer and all that. I see all these fill packs he does, and they're really great fill packs, but would a person use it in music, like in a cover band? Or I'm pretty sure you could use it for like your own original stuff, but doing it in a cover band setting, like if you are hired for a gig and you have to do a cover thing, like you be careful about what fills you do and all that, because you want it to fit and don't want to be too distracting, unless you're a show drummer. But the point is, with that, you don't want to be too distracting with the fills. So the thing with the fill concepts. So the first concept that people understand about fills is a transition. Now, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. I mean, drummers and also other people. The first level of fills is transitioning from one place to another, which for example, like going to the eighth measure of a verse, and then you're transitioning to a chorus, or just transitioning in general. You could transition between the verses and all that, like the fourth measure and eighth measure. You put fills there, or the 2, 4, 6, 8 measure, and it just depends on how active you want to be with these fills. Now, sometimes, most of the time, people rush in fills and all that because it's super exciting and all. But just keep in mind with these fills and all that, at the first level, it's used to transition, and it's not always about you. It's not always about the drums, but when you think about it, you have to use your ear and make a musical, educated decision. Am I the focal point, or is someone else the focal point? And it's just, it takes some time to really figure that out, really analyze that type of thing. Now, the next level of fills, and I don't think anyone really talks about this unless you're in college, is that fills complement. So, what I mean by complement, and this is me with the jazz background, and I implement this to every type of music scenario because it is kind of like a survival thing where you're complementing fills. So imagine like you're playing for somebody and you're just playing a beat. You're just listening to the other players, and you hear a player go like do 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 do, and then the drummer goes da 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 da, and so the drummer plays that, and that's basically a call response thing. And this is a technique that composers do, or just artists, songwriters use, is a call response type of thing. That's another technique for playing fills, is you listen to one person and you do some type of response. Like you kind of have the same rhythms a little bit, but you change it up a little as like a response. It's like, I agree with you. However, I think this is pretty cool. So that's a technique, as I would say, is for this call and response type of scenario for fills, and it's complementing. Now, there's another form of complementing, is that you don't have to, you can play the same thing that a person's played. And I'm popping a lot for some reason. My apologies. Complimenting, like someone plays da 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 da, and the drummer says do 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 do, and so it's like, man, that person heard me and all that. He's actually using his ears and listening to what I actually play. And this is for cover bands. This is jazz stuff. This could be metal. It could be many different types of music scenarios that can happen with this. And complimenting is a big thing. Now, this is the biggest thing for a drummer to do, and it's actually to play melody on the drum set. And it took me the longest time to be able to do this. And I first heard about this concept of playing melody on the drums, I think it was 4 years ago when I was at San Jacinto Community College, and all those teachers over there that I had were awesome. They were the best people I ever had. They really gave me a really strong foundation, a classical point, and also a jazz point as well. So I first learned this concept from different people. I learned from Joel Fulgham over at San Jack. I learned from Ed Soph. Ed Soph really kind of like kicked my butt about making melodies on drums, especially when I went to the Jazz UNT workshop. He talked about that as well, and mentioned about Keith Carlock does that. He just reads melodies like from the Charlie Parker Omni book. He was playing drums, like the melodies, like Billy's Bounce or something like that on the drums. And it's possible. I play Billy Bounce on the drums too. And I'm just trying to figure out ways to be more creative on that. So first starting out is just try to develop the ear. It takes trial and error. Everyone's different. It's kind of like, it's trying to teach someone how to feel music. And it's possible, but it's just slightly a little tricky to teach someone how to feel music. And it's just a experience type of scenario. So you have to experience a little bit of what a person's feeling. Now, it's possible to be taught that kinesthetically, but visually and all that, it takes a little bit deeper level than that. So like you have to look past that. You have to look at like a kind of like a spiritual level with this feel stuff. So this is a very strong level of doing like fill ideas. is where you're actually taking rhythms and you're actually orchestrating it on the drums. And now, some people have a different definition of fills. Some people think that fills are just used with your hands, but in my opinion, and also other drummers that I've studied under, you're not using a drum set at all when you're just using your hands. You have to also use your feet, because you're playing the bass drum, you're playing the hi-hat pedals, and what that's part of a drum. So you're not using the whole drum set if you're just using your hands. Now, in certain scenarios, it's good to do that, but you have all these extra colors that you can add, and it's really important to have this type of dexterity into your playing. So that is a really crucial element to incorporate when you're doing fills, is you have the rhythms going for you, and you're supposed to really not just use your hands, you're supposed to also use your feet. So it's just a step-by-step type of thing with fills. And don't just go resort to these fill ideas that you see on Instagram. You can use them as exercises. Like I have a couple on my Instagram, these ideas of warm-ups, exercises, just like endurance type of things for your feet, your hands, just coordination. I have a couple of things on my Instagram as Essential Drummer on Instagram. And I don't post like these fill ideas that you see as drummers. I just post like concepts, and I post this thing of hi-hat integration, which is actually out of print. But it's a slow, long process. Like as one of my drum teachers over at San Jack told me, Rome was not built in a day, and it wasn't. So, and your drumming wasn't built in a day. Like, especially with who was that drummer? Tony Royster Jr. Yeah, he started at a young age, and it took him a time to be able to get to where he is right now. Like, my gosh, he's like a really good drummer, and all that, really good timing, and really interesting concepts he has, because he was with all these other drummers, getting all these lessons from these famous drummers or best drummers, like I think Dennis Chambers. If I'm not mistaken, like he's really good too. And so what are some other ways to actually get these fill ideas to help you out? So I always say with my students, and I always say with other drummers, what are you listening to lately? And I'd be surprised about all these answers of these drummers not listening to records at all. And I'm like, then why are you being a musician at all? Like, you should be listening to records. You should be becoming a better musician, and not just go on a work day and just listen to these covers and just getting the job done. No, you have to add your own element to the table. Unless you're in a tribute band. Sometimes the tribute bands, they want you to learn the notes by notes. But if it's like a cover band, it's like, we're free-spirited and all that. Just make it your own and all that thing. Like, listen to records, get influence of, because those musicians were pretty much hired guns. Not the artist, but the artist could be a hired gun as well in certain scenarios. But the musicians, like maybe like Billy Idol or Billy Joel, the musicians that were under that record were pretty much hired guns. And so those people had a really good taste of musical vocabulary, musical feel. And so you just listen to records, and you just understand, okay, this feel actually really works in this type of music. So I'll take this example and incorporate this in my playing, and just make musical educated decisions. And so not a lot of people do that nowadays. In my experience and what I see, people just write these crazy fill ideas. I was like, man, that's pretty awesome. Where can I use it? And just think about that. Just think about that question I just asked. Where can I use this fill? Will it make sense in this song? And sometimes you don't have time to ask that question for yourself. You really don't have enough time to be able to ask those questions for yourself at that time or moments when you're doing a gig. But in your practice time, just like listen to one of your favorite musicians or just favorite bands, like either it's Blur, Muse, Coldplay, or just people like the undiscovered music. Like you could listen to that and be inspired from like interesting fills. It's like, man, let me work on that fill and incorporate it in my playing, because I think this fill idea will work in this scenario on one of my gigs. And don't just settle for one genre. If you're trying to get this, whether it's a hobby or, excuse me, or whether you're trying to make this your full-time career. So a hobby versus a career and all. So for my students, I do both and all that. If they're treating it a hobby, I'll make them as a little bit of performer, like give them a little glimpse. But if they're a performer, I'm going to give them everything that I know about this topic. So just listen to recordings, listen to your favorite players, not just artists, but musicians. Like you learn a lot of stuff from jazz solos. If you listen to like, one of my favorite drummers is like, Philly Joe Jones. Well, my drum teacher, Butch Miles, I actually trade fours with him during my lessons. So that was really, really educational. So whenever drum jams is a really good way to getting fill ideas and all that. So when you're like, this is something that I kind of did when I was at Texas State. So there was a group of drummers and we had this little clique of group of jazz drummers. And so we tried to form a time to get together and share ideas. And it was like really the best idea you can do for just getting more exposed to different ideas, because you might not listen to what the other person's listening to. Like you might have never heard of Art Farm. You might have never heard of like the Steve Gadd band. You might never heard that. Oh, Steve Gadd has a band? Oh, I should listen to his playing and try to copy him. And I think another episode I'll talk about is like copying your favorite drummers and how that actually makes an impact. Because with this fill stuff, it's like it's related to copying your other drummers, and but you don't want to be a total copycat because you're just be known as that one guy who really likes this guy who sounds exactly like that guy, but he doesn't have any personality and all of that type of stuff. And I'm not trying to accuse anybody. There's some people that are like that. And tops to them, like there's a person that sounds like Buddy Rich that's out there, and amazing drummer, but he just sounds like another Buddy Rich. And we just need a different new person who is able to become a better musician and shows their personality, their niche. So I think that's pretty much it. I think I gave you all a lot of information about this Phil's ideas and some ideas you probably never thought of before. So just don't settle with the fills are just for transitions. No, they're used to compliment people. And it's just really essential to just like take all this information, and always take this information with grain of salt and all that. But this is my personal experience. This is what some of my teachers have told me. And it's actually helped me out a lot as a performer and survive in some gigs. Like some gigs I really have to survive. Because there's sometimes you don't know the song, you don't know what the proper thing is. But if you just listen to the other instruments, then you get a basic idea of how to play fills in a musical, productive way. So I think that might be it for today, guys. So yeah. So name's Todd Blackman, still the drummer, and I'll see you next time in the next podcast. All right. Have a great day, guys.